Welcome to our class on Chassidic. We're going to be learning a beautiful, deep Chassidic discourse of the Rebbe on the holiday of Purim. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called Balilah, ההוא. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse in the year Tafshin Chav 57 years ago, and the Rebbe went on to certify and edit this Chassidic discourse in honor of Purim in the year Tafshin Nun 32 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in the Megillah where it says, "Balilah ההוא," on that night, Nadada Shnas HaMelech, the sleeping of the king, was awakened. So the Rebbe asks a simple question. He says, why does it say Balilah ההוא on that night? Seemingly, when it says Balilah, and that the night that he couldn't sleep, it's referring to what was going on then. So why does it say Balilah ההוא? The word ההוא seemingly is extra. So Rebbe says we're going to explain it based on what the previous Rebbe brings in a Chassidic discourse with the same title of Balilah ההוא, and he brings what is brought down in the customs of the Maharil. The Maharil says that when you say Balilah ההוא in the Megillah, you usually hear the Chazan saying Balilah ההוא. When you say Balilah ההוא, you have to start saying it much louder when you read that with those two words. Why? Because that's the main miracle. Balilah ההוא is the main miracle. And the previous Rebbe brings Maharil, and he explains it based on what it says in the Medrash, in the Yalkut, that when it says Nadada Shnas HaMelech, that the king, so to speak, was awake, couldn't sleep, is referring to not only Achashverosh on a physical level, it's referring to Hashem himself. In other words, what does that mean? That the Jewish people were in a situation of Balilah ההוא, we are sleeping. And when we're sleeping, unfortunately, Hashem is sleeping. And how do we know this? Because it says clearly, Ani Yashena, I am sleeping. And the Zohar says, Hashem is sleeping. When Hashem is sleeping? Begalusa. When we're in exile, when we forget about Hashem, we don't learn, we don't pray, we don't do mitzvot, then, so to speak, Hashem is sleeping. And as when we sleep in Galus, when we fall asleep behind the wheel, when we're in exile, and we forget about Hashem, that causes Hashem, so to speak, to fall asleep. And that's why it says, Balilah ההוא, on that night, the king was awake. And that's why it's the main miracle. Why? Because what is Lila referring to? It's referring to exile. It's referring to Galus. And it's a time that, so to speak, when we're sleeping, Hashem is sleeping. And that's why Balilah ההוא, that night, which is in Galus, Nadada Shnas HaMelech, the king, Hashem, was awakened. And that's why it's the main miracle. Because even though we're sleeping, and so to speak, Hashem is sleeping, but nevertheless, Hashem was awake, and that's why that's the main miracle. The miracle is that even though we're sleeping, and if Hashem is sleeping, nevertheless, Hashem is awake, and He's there to help us and bail us out from Galus. So based on this, the Rebbe explains another important point in the term of Balilah ההוא on that night. Why? Because ההוא doesn't say what night it is. ההוא. That. Which one is that one? So in Hebrew, it's called a lashon of nister. It's not spelling out which night it is. It's more like, it's vague. In other words, what does nister represent? What does vagueness represent? That represents more concealment. So Balilah ההוא, Balilah is concealment, it's galus, and ההוא is concealment. In other words, besides the fact that we have, unfortunately, we're in Galus, we're in exile, which is generally Laila, night is referring to exile, but even more so in the days of Achashverosh, besides the concealment of exile, we even had a double concealment. And that's why it says, Balilah ההוא, a double concealment. And the Rebbe brings, like it's brought down in the Talmud says, how do we know Esther and Torah? Where do we find Esther in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses? So the Talmud says, because it says in the Torah, Anoichi, Hastir, Aster Esponai, that I will conceal myself, and that's a connection to Esther. And we know the Baal Shem Tov explains, and he says as follows, what does it mean, Hastir, Aster? I'm going to conceal myself, a double expression of concealment. One cover, and second cover, what's the double concealment? So the Baal Shem Tov explains, not a second cover quantitatively, that the concealment itself is concealed. And it's not only a double concealment, the concealment itself is concealed. And so based on what Rebbe explains, that's what it says, Balilah ההוא. In other words, a double concealment, not a quantitatively. It was a qualitatively double concealment. That the fact that we're Balilah, the fact that we're in Galus and God is not revealed, that itself is concealed to us. We're not distracted. We're not bothered the fact that we're in Gullus. Because we don't feel the fact that we're in Gullus, and we don't feel that it's dark and it's night. And what does that mean? We look at darkness and we say it's light. That itself is Gullus. That's a double Gullus. If we're in Gullus, we know we're in Gullus. It's terrible. We want Mashiach to come. But when we think this is Gula, we think this is like redemption. That's real Gullus. And the verse says, balilah hu, in this double Gullus, Nadada Shnas HaMelech, so the king, so to speak, was awake, to bring out the great power miracle, the power of the miracle here. That even though that we're sleeping, and we're so sleeping that we don't even realize that we're in Gullus, and as Rebbe brings, there's a major difference between sleeping and slumbering. What does that mean? When a person's sleeping, so fine, so you have a dream, and you know the dream is falsehood. So you had a dream, and you know the dream is made up stuff. But what happens when you get deep into Gullus, when you slumber away in Gullus, then what happens, you actually think that falsehood is true. When you're in Gullus, we're living in a false world. Okay, so we know it's false. We accept it. But when you start believing the falsehood, that's a double Gullus. And when we start believing the falsehood, that's when Hashem, so to speak, also falls asleep on us. But nevertheless, even though we're in Gullus, and unfortunately we believe the Gullus is, so to speak, true, then what happened, the miracle happened was, none of the Shnas HaMelech, that Hashem, so to speak, is not sleeping, and even in a regular sleep, that we're just in regular Gullus, Hashem is awake, and therefore, and that's the huge miracle of Balilah hu, not the Shnas HaMelech. Now, the Rebbe continues to explain, where is it what happened all of a sudden? If we're sleeping and we're in Gullus, why did all of a sudden Hashem wake up? So he explains the reason why Hashem was awake, that's the miracle of Purim, that came about because we were Mesiras Nefesh. We, a whole year, we learned Torah, we prayed, we did mitzvahs, even though it was hard, and then, by doing that a whole year, that caused Hashem, so to speak, to wake up. So Rebbe says, 1 second. The fact, as we all know, when we do the will of Hashem, when we do the will of Hashem, so the natural course of events is Hashem doesn't sleep, Hashem doesn't slumber, Hashem doesn't get distracted. But what are we saying? That the Jewish people for a whole year were Mesiras Nefesh, they were living a life of Torah and mitzvahs and prayer, and they were going a self-sacrifice. So what's the big miracle? And a huge miracle that Hashem was awake. Why wouldn't he be awake if we're going Mesiras Nefesh a whole year? That's question number one. Second question Rebbe asks is, generally speaking, there's a pshat. What's a simple pshat? That balilah hu, on that night, the king, so to speak, couldn't sleep. He was awake. Who is it referring to? The simple story in the Megillah, it's referring to Achashverosh. In other words, there's something happened balilah hu, and therefore, it's not the Shnas HaMelech. Like, in the story, he was sleeping, he couldn't sleep because something was bothering him, and therefore he was awake. That's a simple story with Achashverosh. Now, we all know that anything that happens down in this world comes because that's the way, and it's on a spiritual level. So therefore, when we're saying that not the Shnas HaMelech, that Hashem was awake, why was he awake? Because of something balilah hu. But if we just explain that balilah hu means it's a gullus, and it's an exile within an exile, how does from a gullus, an exile within an exile, cause Hashem to be awake? In other words, what does Lailahu means? Lailahu means it's concealment, and a tremendous concealment. So if it's concealment and a tremendous concealment, that's the opposite of being awake. So what's the connection? Balilahu, because of the concealment, Hashem was awake. So Rebbe says I'm going to understand this based on what's explained. The author explains in Torah in the commentaries on the Chassidic commentaries on the holiday of Purim, and also the way it's explained at length in the Chassidic discourses of the Winkler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, and he explains as follows: that Yoim, the term Yoim, day, represents revelation. The term Laila, night, represents concealment. And in each one, in day, which represents revelation, and night, which represents concealment, you have both. You have revelation and concealment in both, which basically means in day you have revelation and concealment, and in night you have revelation and concealment as well. And Rebbe proves the point. I mean, based on, we know it says, many times in the Torah it says, Yoim Hazeh. Yoim means, again, revelation. Hazeh, this one, means the day is revealed. And that's why, because Zeh means revelation. This is it. You're being very, very specific. This is what it is. So, but the day is revealed. But on the other hand, something that says Yoim Hahu. Yoim is revelation. Hahu, that one. Which one is it? So we're in a state of concealment. So you can have Yoim Hazeh, the day which revealed. You have Yoim, the day which is concealed. The same thing also when it comes to at night. Sometimes it says Laila Hazeh, night, which is generally speaking concealed, but this one, so you have a revealed component of night, and then you have Laila Hu, night, concealment, that one, with double concealment. Okay. What does that mean? What does that mean that you can have day, revelation, that makes sense. But day concealment, what does that mean? Night concealment, that makes sense. What does it mean night is revealed? So the Rebbe explains as follows, and he says like this. That the general difference between day and night is day is revelation, day is, and night is concealment. Just like we see, for example, in the Torah says, God called the day, God called light day, and he called darkness night. So basically, day is associated with light, clarity, and night is associated with darkness. That's an inherent. Anytime you say the word day, it refers to light refers to day, darkness is night is darkness. Okay, that's in generally speaking. But then there's another component. Then there's the component, the way something is revealed in this world, it comes down into this world, and the way something is not revealed in this world, it's concealed. In other words, like this. When something is revealed in this world, that's the yoim, the second component of yoim, the way it's revealed. So it's not inherent, it's just revealed in this world. When something is concealed, so it's not totally concealed, it's just not revealed in this world. In other words, like this. So when you have yoim, it's revelation, Laila is concealment, Yoim Hazeh means the revelation is drawn down in this world. Yoim Ahu means it's revealed, but it's somewhere it's not revealed into this world. The same thing with Laila as well. You have Laila, darkness, the way it's Hazeh, the way it's revealed into this world. And then you have Laila Hu, the way darkness is concealed from this world. Or the way it's still in its source. And based on this, Rebbe explains why, when it came to the Jewish people going out of Egypt, what did it say? B'etzem hayoim hazeh. In middle of this day, all the Jewish people went out of Egypt. What does that mean, b'etzem hayoim hazeh? Because it was revealed, and the blessings were revealed. So it was yoim, it was revelation, but it was hazeh. We went out of Egypt, it was revealed. Listen, the fact that God's always with us, but when God makes a miracle and takes us out, then those blessings are revealed. And the same thing also when it comes to learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And the Rebbe says specifically learning Torah and doing mitzvahs in the way it's in this world, not the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. So the way we learn Torah in this mitzvahs, what does it say in the Torah? Hayoim hazeh, hayoim again revelation, hazeh drawing it down into this world. God is commanding us to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. Which means it's not learning Torah in theory or in our heart. No, we learn Torah, we say the words, we do the mitzvahs. It means we draw down the godly energy in a revealed way in this world. However, when the Mashiach comes, what does it say? The ultimate redemption. It says by Yoim Ahu, in that day. So by Yoim it's going to be revealed, but what's going to be revealed? The Torah, the way it's concealed today. Because the revelation, when we went out of Egypt, it's the revelation of light, the way it came down to this world. We were taken out of Egypt. We had a miracle in this world. Yoim Hazeh. However, when Mashiach comes, we're going to have the revelation of light, the way it's higher than being revealed in this world. And that's why it says Yoim Ahu. So that's in terms of Yoim. So you have the Yoim, the way the revelation is revealed in this world. And then you have the Yoin, the way it's not revealed in this world. And it's going to be revealed, so to speak, in the future. The same thing also Rebbe says applies to Laila. So Laila generously is referring to what? To night, to darkness. Now, darkness, which is higher than light, and darkness actually is a source from light. Because light comes from darkness. So darkness before it's revealed, or the way it's in its source, what is that called? It's darkness. But before it's revealed, before it's in this world, even darkness in this world, it's called Laila Hu, because it's dark, it's concealed, but it's Ahu, it's not even revealed in this world. But what happens when you have darkness in this world? Then you have Laila Hazeh. You have darkness, but it's revealed. You can say it's dark now. The darkness is not here. How can you say this is the darkness? You can't see it. So the darkness that we don't see is Laila Hahu, and the darkness we could see is Laila Hazeh. Now, but the fact is, when it comes to darkness, the dark Laila Hahu is actually darker than Laila Hazeh. For example, we say, now it's day, it's bright, and you have a blessing that's revealed. Night is dark, but we can point to it. So to us, darkness is concealment, because you can't see. But the fact is, could we say that it's dark? So the mere fact that you can say that it's dark, that's why it's called Halayla Hazeh, because the darkness is drawn down to this world. So what darkness is actually darker? The Laila Hu, the darkness is not drawn down to this world. Laila Hazeh, it's dark, but it's drawn down in this world. Laila Hu is not even drawn down to this world. Now, so since the darkness, which is higher than the light, which is the source of the light and the darkness in the world, so therefore the concealment, the physical darkness that comes from the darkness on high, Lailahu, is a much greater darkness than the darkness that comes down to this world. In other words, when we say Laila Hazeh, so we're pointing to the darkness. So even though it's dark, but it's revealed to us the darkness. We literally feel the darkness. You can literally point your finger, this is dark. It's a dark room, a dark place, etc. So it's a darkness, but it's revealed to you that you can point to it. But Laila, who is referring to what type of darkness? A darkness which is totally, you can't even point to it. It's so concealed you don't even realize that it's dark. Okay, so what is the Rebbe explaining over here? He's saying like this. There's Yoim, which is revelation. There's Laila, which is darkness. But then each one has revelation and concealment. In Yoim, that's revealed to us, we call it Yoim Hazeh. Then there's revelation which is concealed from us, it's called Yoim Ahu. In darkness, the darkness that's revealed to us is called Yoim Hazeh, and the darkness that's concealed from us is called Yoim Ahu. Now, we're going to go into this a little deeper, but the Rebbe is now going to explain something, another insight into Yom and Laila. So we're going to veer off, and we're going to come back to this point. But again, to clarify, the point we just finished off was that there's Yom and Laila, which means revelation and concealment, and within each, the revelation and concealment, you have revelation and concealment. So again, so in the revelation of Yom, you have when it's revealed to us, that's Yoim Hazeh. When it's concealed from us, it's Yoim Ahu. And then you have darkness, Laila. When it's revealed to us, it's called Laila Hazeh. And the darkness which is beyond, obviously much higher darkness, it's called Laila Ahu. But now the Rebbe says he's going to give another explanation which is brought down the difference between Laila Hazeh and Laila Ahu on another level. And he explains like this. What does it mean, Yoim? And again, this is a different insight. And we'll get back to the main point that we're studying in this Chassidic discourse. What does Yoim mean? Yoim means it's revealed. What does it mean it's revealed? Revealed on a spiritual level, that we can see God and godliness. Or we can comprehend God, and godliness. So that's Yoim. Yoim means I see God, or I comprehend God. It's light, it's clear, God is revealed to me. What is Laila? God is not revealed to me. But nevertheless it's called Laila. It means I can say it's not revealed. So what does Laila mean? It means I don't see it, I don't understand it, but I have faith. So again, here's a different insight into Yoim and Laila. Yoim is when you see God in godliness, you comprehend it. Laila is when you have faith in Hashem. What does Laila Hazeh mean? Laila means, again, we have faith in Hashem. Hazeh means that it's revealed. That's when the faith that we have is very, very strong. And it's really real and true to us. Just like when you see God in godliness, that's Yoim. The same thing also when your faith is very, very strong, that's Laila Hazeh. And that's why the verse says, in reference to Pesach, Leil Shimurim. It's the night that Hashem watches us. And if you give a look, what does it say in the Torah? Who this is? Halayla Hazeh. this night. What does it mean, this night? The fact is we were in Galus. So it's called Laila. It's night. We were still in Galus. But nevertheless, even though we were in Galus, it was Hazeh, it was this night. Because we did have strong faith in Hashem. It wasn't where we were out of Egypt yet, because we went out of Egypt, we would have Yom. Oh, we saw God. We comprehended it. We were still in Egypt. We were still holding on to faith. But faith, what type of faith? A faith that it was Hazeh, we were able to see it. Just like, almost like seeing it. Our faith was real. And it was clear. And we were certain. Just like when you see something. So again, just to recap, what's Rebbe explaining here? Yom is revelation, which is referring to when we see and comprehend godliness. Laila is concealment of seeing and comprehending. But what do we have? We have faith. And Laila Hazeh means that what? That's very strong to us. Just like when we went out of Egypt, it said, Leil Shimurim Hu Laila Hazeh. It means we were in exile, we were in Egypt, and we were holding on to faith, but the faith was real. Why? Because we had the clarity. Now, how do we get to that level that we can have faith? And faith that should be so strong. So the Rebbe says we got to that level through doing our work in Egypt. What work did we do? So technically we were working with bricks and mortar. And through doing our work, we were able to have the faith in a clear way. So Rebbe says, then we work with Chaymer Leveinim, a hard labor, cause us to have faith in Hashem. Hashem is going to take us out. Today, we're also in Galus. So we're also Laila. It's also dark. It's also have faith. But if we want to have faith, Laila Hazeh, the faith should be real. That even in exile that we're living in today, that we should have the real faith. That comes through working hard. How do we work hard today? We don't have to all lay bricks. By learning Torah. As we know, it says, B'choymer Levein refers to the way of learning, Kal B'choymer. We learn out one thing from the next. Or by having clarity in halacha, what Hashem wants for us in the code of the Jewish law. Or, for example, that's one way, by learning, whether it's learning Talmud or learning halacha. That's how faith becomes real. Another way is by literally working hard, earning a living. As we know, it says clearly, by the sweat of your brow, you're going to earn your living. And just like by night, which is referring to our faith, and we had clarity in faith. When we went out of Egypt, we got that clarity through working hard, b'choymer leveinim, with the bricks and the mortar, literally. So the same thing also, we can do it today by physically working hard, and we know we're supposed to work 6 days a week, or by learning Torah. And that's why it says in the Talmud, that whoever accepts upon himself the yoke of learning, not just reading a book, reading Chumash, but sitting and learning and struggling to understand the Mishnah, the Talmud, Kabbalah, Chassidus, or whatever you're learning in Torah, they take away from you the need to have to really work hard to earn a living. On the other hand, if somebody doesn't take on the effort of learning Torah, you're going to have to take on to work very, very hard. Because when a person works, whether it's in learning, you have a choice. In learning, it's your choice, or in physical labor, you reach the level of Halayla Hazeh, which means you reach the level that your faith is very, very strong in Hashem. And based on what's explained in the Chassidic Discourse, and it's in reference to Balilah Hazeh. So what does that mean? That Laila Hazeh means that the faith, and the faith is real. So unfortunately, what does Halaylahu mean? That unfortunately, someone would be lacking in the clarity of faith. So Laila refers to faith. Laila Hazeh means the clarity of faith. And Lailahu is, you have faith, but it's not strong. And Rebbe explains another insight into Laila Hazeh and Lailahu. That knows both Zeh and Hu is going on tonight. If the night is in a revealed way, and it means being says you realize that it's night. You realize, unfortunately, that you're in Gullus. Or the night is, or who, that you don't even realize that you're in Gullus. It's another insight, B'Laila. Either you realize, B'Laila you're in Gullus, but we realize we're in Gullus, that's at least will get us out. Or you don't even realize you're in Gullus. Okay, so that's the side point where it brings the point of B'Laila, referring to faith. And when the faith is clear and how we can have the faith, but now that we're going to go back to try to comprehend this deep idea of what we said, that there's day and there's night, which means there's revelation, there's concealment, and then within the revelation, you have revelation of concealment within the revelation, or in the concealment, you have revelation and concealment. So Rebbe says, now the Rebbe is going to explain this based when it's brought down in many, many places in Chassidus, based on what it says in the Zohar. The Zohar says as follows. Oyer Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, is very, very high. And it's also very, very low. Let me say it in Hebrew. Oyer Ein Sof, L'mayla Adin Ketz, the infinite light of Hashem is very, very high. And also, L'mataman, it goes down to the lowest level. What does it mean to the lowest level? It means a place where God's concealed. But nevertheless, even though God's concealed, God spread out and reveals the infinite light there. Hashem literally allows himself to spread out and to be revealed all over, even in the lowest places. And also in the highest places. Now, but the Rebbe explains like this. Let's think about it for a second. Hashem is infinite. So Hashem is revealed to the lowest places and to the highest places. The way Hashem is revealed on the highest levels, do you experience any revelation? On the contrary, the higher you go, you realize that that's all nothing. The higher you go to the infinite light, you realize it's all nothing because Hashem is infinite. So what happens is, Oyer Ein Sof L'mayla means, as you go higher and higher, what do you realize? It's all nothing compared to the infinite Hashem. Now, when the light comes down into this world, so you think, it's something. There's some kind of revelation. But the fact is, so when you look down into this world when God is revealed, so it looks like, there's something. We see, we understand, we comprehend, we know, etc. But the fact is this world really a something? No, it's a nothing. It looks like it's a something, but it's really a nothing. So the question is, where does it even come from that in this world, which is really a nothing, God is concealed, it should think there's a something? And the answer is because before Hashem created the tzimtzum, the concealment, he made room that there should be a possibility for a relation down to this world. So there is room in the source that there could be a revelation in this world. Now, so let's clarify these few levels. It will help us understand what the Rebbe is saying is. God, Oyer Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem. If you go higher, it means closer to the infinite, to the essence of Hashem. It's nothing, because you're realizing it's nothing. As you go away down to this physical world, you think it's something. But the truth is it's really a nothing. But where is there room that you should think that it's a something? Because Hashem allowed there should be a revelation. But the revelation is really a concealment. So again, the way on high, it's really a nothing. The way it's down here, it looks like it's a something. And the only reason why it looks like it's a something is because Hashem allowed it to be a something, but really it's a nothing. But it comes from the place where Hashem allowed it that there should be a revelation. Now, so based on this, Rebbe explains very, very powerfully. He says as follows. What is the source? We brought up before four components. There's the idea of Yoim Hazeh, Yoim Hahu, and Laila Hazeh and Laila Hu. We're going to talk about right now three of them. There's Yoim Hazeh, the way Yoim means revelation. Hazeh, the way it's revealed. Yoim, there's revelation. Ahu, the way it's concealed. And then you have Laila, where, so to speak, there's total concealment. And there's two levels there as well. So Rebbe says like this. After the tzimtzum, Hashem allowed there should be this physical world. And this physical world, Ein Sof is lamata lamata, which means God is revealed in this physical world. And Hashem allowed this physical world to experience a revelation. So what is this world called? It's called Yom, God is revealed. And Hazeh, we see it as something. What's the source of that? The source of that is that the fact that Hashem allowed there should be a tzimtzum and there should be a revelation in this world. On the other hand, when you look really at this world, what do you see this world? Is this world something? No, it's a nothing. But on the other hand, so what is that called? That's called Yom Ahu. It's revealed, but we know it's nothing. What is the source of that? That's of Yom Ahu. That's coming from the revelation of Hashem before the Tzimtzum, that He wanted there should be a revelation. So in other words, Yom Hazeh is coming from a lower place. Yom Hazeh is coming from the revelation which happens after the Tzimtzum, that we can think that, God forbid, so to speak, there's some kind of revelation here. On the other hand, Yom Ahu, that we say that there's a revelation, well, really it's coming from nothing. That's coming from a place before the Tzimtzum. On the other hand, what's the source of Laila, which is higher than, so to speak, any concealment? That is from Lamaila Maila, where you really, in the truth is, it's really, really a nothing. So again, recap. There's many levels. For this conversation, 3 levels. There's the way Ein Sof is Lamaila Maila, which basically over there you realize it's really a nothing, because Hashem is really everything. Then Hashem made the Tzimtzum. And in the Tzimtzum, He allowed for it to be a revelation. But the truth is, we know the Tzimtzum doesn't really, it's only like a distortion to think that's real. And then you have the physical world that looks like it's real, but the truth is it's really nothing, but it looks like it's real. So the fact that we can say Yom Hazeh, it's revealed, and we can say, oh, this is something, where is that coming from? That's coming from the light after the Tzimtzum, the lowest light. When we say it's revealed, but it's concealed, that's coming from the light before the Tzimtzum, that allowed the revelation to happen. And the fact that Ein Sof is all the way in the highest level, it's really a nothing, that's a source from Laila. The source from concealment is actually coming from a higher place. Now the Rebbe is going to go even a step further and step deeper. And he says like this. What created the ability that we can have this physical world? To say Yom Hazeh, or even Yom Ahu, where there's a connection to this world, it called comes from the Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means the contraction that it created, like almost like a veil between the infinite and the finite that allowed the finite to exist. So let's talk about the idea of a tzimtzum. What does a tzimtzum mean? There's a contraction of light that allowed for revelation in this world. So in Kabbalah, it's called a tzimtzum. The purpose of it, why did Hashem create a tzimtzum? The reason why Hashem created a tzimtzum, so there could be a revelation in this world. So again, the purpose of the tzimtzum is so there should be a revelation in this world. Because if God didn't make the tzimtzum, this world wouldn't be able to have any revelation. So the purpose of the tzimtzum is for the revelation. Now, in the tzimtzum for the revelation, there's 2 components. What does that mean? What is the ultimate revelation? What's the ultimate revelation? The tzimtzum's revelation is that through the tzimtzum, we'll have the revelation we have now in this world, but ultimately the ultimate revelation of the infinite light, that even in the physical world we'll be able to receive the infinite light, the Ein Sof. So again, the first reason for the tzimtzum is that ultimately when Mashiach comes, this physical world, the physical world, when we see it as physical, we'll be able to absorb infinite. It's hard to comprehend it. It's an impossibility, we think. But when Mashiach comes, the tzimtzum will have accomplished that the physical world will be able to absorb the infinite light. That's one point. The second point is, not only will the physical world be able to absorb, they're focusing on the physical world, but the revelation of the essence of the infinite light, which is even higher than the light of before the tzimtzum, will be able to be revealed into this world. So again, like this. Point number 1 is, the goal of the tzimtzum is for revelation. The revelation is 2 components. One is that we should have, that the physical world should be able to receive the light, And the second, that literally the infinite light, even higher than Tzimtzum, of the light before the Tzimtzum, should be able to reveal into this world. That's two reasons for the Tzimtzum. For A, the purpose, again, generally is for the revelation. Revelation, two components. One is the physical world should be able to receive the infinite light, and B, it should be able to receive literally the very powerful infinite light. That's point number one. Another reason for the Tzimtzum, because the Tzimtzum acknowledges the shleimus, the completion of the infinite light, that the infinite light is not limited only in revelation, but the infinite light has the power to create concealment. In other words, like this. Before the Tzimtzum, Hashem was all over. Was there a place he wasn't? No. The Tzimtzum accomplished an empty space. Wow. Empty space? Hashem is not there? Exactly. The Tzimtzum accomplished, it could be a space where Hashem doesn't exist. So it goes like this. There's two opposite dimensions of the Tzimtzum. One reason for the Tzimtzum is you create a concealment so that you can have the revelation in the physical world from the highest levels. The second reason for the Tzimtzum is that there should be an empty space, because God is not limited only to revelation. God could be also non-existent. Now, two opposites. And the Rebbe says like this. This that we're saying, that in the Tzimtzum you have two components. One is for the revelation, that the world should receive it, and the ultimate, the huge revelation. And to create a concealment, because Hashem is not limited only in revelation, he can be in concealment as well. The reason is because what's the source of the Tzimtzum? In order to create a Tzimtzum, it has to come from a higher source. The source of the Tzimtzum is that in Oyer Ein Sof, which we normally think Oyer, light, the infinite light. Light is a something, it's Oyer, it's light. But there's a concealment of the Oyer Ein Sof. There's the Helem, there's a concealment of Oyer Ein Sof. What's the Tzimtzum doesn't come from Oyer. The Tzimtzum, the concealment comes from the light, from the Helem, from the concealment of light. Which concealment of what light? A concealment of the Oyer Ein Sof. So the source of these two components, that the Tzimtzum is to create the light that the world can receive, and to create the concealment, that's because in the source of the Tzimtzum, there's two levels. In the source of the Tzimtzum, in the Helem, the concealment of Ein Sof, there's two levels. What are the two levels? We're explaining like this. So now we're going really deep here. We're going into not only, the Tzimtzum was to create either revelation, that the world should receive and a very high light, or to create the concealment. So Hashem is not limited in revelation concealment. We're now looking to the source of the Tzimtzum. That in the source, you have two components, and that's how you have the two aspects of the Tzimtzum. What's the source of the Tzimtzum? They're like this. You have the source of the Tzimtzum, which means the koyach, the concealment part of Ein Sof, which in that concealment, there is some kind of connection to a revelation. Even though the concealment is higher than revelation. But it has a connection to revelation. Concealment means it's concealed. But the concealment has a relationship with revelation. It's not revelation. Concealment's a concealment, but it has a relation with revelation. Now, this level of concealment, which has a relationship with revelation, from this level, was able to create the energy in the Tzimtzum that from there comes out the revelation afterwards, that the world will reveal, will feel the revelation, and the revelation will be in the world. But then there's the essence of concealment, which has nothing to do with revelation. The concealment of the infinite light, which has no connection, no relationship, nothing to do with revelation. And the Tzimtzum that comes from that level, knows a level that's nothing to do with revelation, and the Tzimtzum that comes that Hashem is not limited to revelation, comes from the level of the source where concealment has no connection to revelation, and therefore you have the source, that comes the source of the Tzimtzum is to show that Hashem is not limited to revelation. Now, So again, to recap, this is two deep component. You have the tzimtzum, the concealment. The concealment was for two reasons, one or two reasons. Either to create the great revelation afterwards, and two levels in the revelation, or to create a concealment that Hashem is not limited. The source of that is because in the concealment of Eir and Soif, there's one where it has a relationship with revelation, and one where it's totally no connection. And that's a source for both of those levels. So based on this, Rebbe says, he's going to explain a great insight into two components of night. Night, as we know, there's night is concealment, but we said in concealment, there's laila, who concealment within concealment, and then you have light, the concealment, the way the concealment is revealed. And like, for example, we have the concealment, the way it's down in this world, and the way the concealment is down in this world is actually opposite the way the concealment is on a higher level. And Rebbe explains like this. On the higher level of Laila Hahu, which means it's concealed and it's even like deeper concealed, is much higher than when the Laila Hazeh, the way the concealment comes down to this world, it comes down to this world. Why? Because there's the level of Laila Hazeh. For example, let's say you say it's dark, but you can point to it. So it's dark, but there's a relationship with it. But then there's Laila Hu, you can't even point to it. And so so based on this, Rebbe explains that the two levels of Laila Hazeh, Laila means God's concealed, and concealed, we know it's concealed, or it's totally off the charts, comes from the two levels of the tzimtzum, whether the tzimtzum is for the revelation or the tzimtzum is just to create the concealment, but even deeper, it comes from the source of the tzimtzum. The component of Laila Hazeh, it means God is concealed, but you can know He's concealed. That comes from the level of concealment, which has a relationship with revelation. But Laila Hu, where God's concealed and you don't even know the concealment, that comes from the level of the tzimtzum, the source of the tzimtzum, with this helam concealment, which has no connection to reality. In other words, Laila Hazeh, that's referring to the concealment, which has some kind of relation with reality in the source of the tzimtzum, and since it's coming from that level, it has some kind of relation with reality. But on the other hand, the connection of Laila Hu comes from the source of tzimtzum, which has no relation, therefore it's totally concealed. And like Chabad gives an example, and he says like this: the lower level of Laila, that means that it's concealed, but it has some kind of relation with reality. Like, for example, the Rebbe says, let's look at the times of Golus. We're in exile. Exile, God's concealed. But nevertheless, even though God's concealed is called Laila. But we have a yearning. We have a yearning for God. And we know that in Golus, our yearning for God is much greater than our yearning for God in the times of the temple. Why is that? Because the yearning that we have, which is the revelation for the concealment, is coming from a place of concealment. And since it's coming from a place of concealment, God is concealed, it's coming from a deeper place. It's coming from the place of concealment of Golus. Therefore, our yearning for Hashem is much stronger in times of Golus versus in times of the temple. So that's in a level of Laila Hazeh, which means God's concealed, but we know He's concealed, and if we have a yearning for Hashem. But then you have Laila Hu, which, what does that mean? God's so concealed we don't even know He's concealed, which is connected to the tzimtzum, which is higher, the highest level, where the concealment has nothing to do with revelation, and therefore you don't even realize how God's concealed. So in other words, like this, there's two levels in concealment. There's Laila Hazeh, God's concealed, but we know He's concealed. Where's that sourced? That's sourced in the tzimtzum, But the way Tzimtzum has in the concealment of the Tzimtzum has some kind of relationship with revelation. But then you have Laila, who is sourced where, in which level of Tzimtzum, where the concealment has no connection with revelation. So it's actually coming from much a deeper place. So what does that mean practically? We know that all this is deep stuff. But all the deep stuff has to have some kind of practical end goal. Otherwise, we just can go ahead and go on a mountain in India and meditate. But the purpose is to take these powerful, deep teachings about the Tzimtzum and about the concealment and about the Laila and to make it practical. How does it help us in our serving Hashem? The Rebbe explains like this: that our service of Hashem by night, which means we're in exile, God's concealed, or generally life in this physical world where God's concealed. So if we're talking about on the level of the Tzimtzum, which has a relationship to the world, or so that the Tzimtzum is, so that it should be a revelation later on, that God will be revealed in this world. So that awakens within us what? A yearning, a desire. I want to go out of Gullus, because we know it's dark, and we know it's all about the revelation, so we have a yearning. So Laila Hazeh, which is a lower level, that gives us a yearning to go out of Gullus. But on the other hand, the spiritual avodah of Laila Hu, which means that it's so dark, and it comes from the place of the Tzimtzum. The whole purpose of the Tzimtzum is to create a concealment, because God is not only limited in revelation, and the source is the concealment, which has no connection with revelation. So what's that practically? That is when we meditate on the source of this tremendous darkness, that the source is Mehela Ma'atzmi. In other words, like this. In other words, very, very powerful. What Rebbe is saying is like this. You have, in darkness, you have two different levels of darkness. You have darkness which has a connection with that we know it's dark. And then you have the darkness we don't even know it's dark. What's the source? It's all it's sourced in the Tzimtzum. Whether the Tzimtzum is for the revelation, or the Tzimtzum just to create the empty space. Deeper, that the source of that is that the concealment of the Tzimtzum comes from a part of concealment which is connected to revelation, or it's totally way beyond it. It's just the highest level of concealment. So what does that mean practically? It means like this. In the lower level of Laila Hazeh, so we know it's dark, and we know we're in the dark, so but we're still dark. But we have the awareness, the Hazeh, we have the awareness, so we have a yearning, we want to go out of Gullus, we want the revelation, because ultimately it's all about revelation. On a deeper level, B'Laila, who means we don't want revelation. We don't want revelation. In the B'Laila, who the meditation is that, in this darkness, in this concealment, that we don't even realize it's concealed, guess what? This is the deepest part of Hashem. B'Laila, who? In this B'Laila, who, when it's so dark, and it's not because we want a revelation, no, this deepest darkness, this is the essence of Hashem. In the darkness, where you don't see any hope, and you don't see any reason, and you don't have a yearning, this is Hashem himself, the essence of Hashem himself. So based on this, the Rebbe explains beautifully and powerfully why it says B'Laila Hu. In this, well, again, now we have the Kabbalistic insight. B'Laila Hu, now we know where we're at. B'Laila Hu means we're in the darkness. Hahu, which is totally concealed. In that concealment, who is awake? Hashem himself is awake there. In other words, the greatest darkness creates that Hashem is awake. Because it's all about Hashem there. It's not about revelation. It's not about a yearning. It's not about anything. It's just about Hashem himself. Because what is the source of Laila Hu? Darkness, extreme darkness. Down here, what's the source? Laila Hu on high, which is higher than day. It's higher than Yom Hazeh. It's for sure higher than Yom Hahu, and it's even higher than Laila Hazeh. So the sleeping Laila Hu down here, but Laila Hu down here, its sources in Laila Hahu down here, sourced from the Laila Hu on high. And because the Jewish people, even though it was dark, they didn't see, they didn't understand, there was no faith, there was no intellect, but nevertheless, they just did it. They stood with Mesiras Nefesh, they went on self-sacrifice a whole year. Why were they going on self-sacrifice? Exactly, because it was concealment. From the concealment, not because of a reason. And like, it's brought down many places in Chassidus, that when we're in Galus, when we're in exile, the revelation and the power of Mesiras Nefesh is much stronger than when the Beis Hamikdash existed. Why? Because when the lights are off, that's when you're in Laila Hu, that's when you're in the deepest places. And then we're able to draw down from the highest level of Laila Hu, much higher obviously than the way Laila Hu is down in this world. And based on this, Rebbe explains the connection between the two insights of Balilah Hu. That night, the darkest part, Nada Dashnas HaMelech. The king is awake. Why? Because on one hand, the Laila Hu that night causes us to sleep. Because it's dark. So if that's the case, if it was Laila Hu so why was he awake? Because that's the power of the miracle. Even though it was Laila Hu, even though it was dark, but nevertheless, guess what? The king is awake, specifically in the Laila Hu. And even deeper is that literally the darkness caused the king to be awake. Why? Because that the darkness causes someone to sleep, that's on its own. It's dark, you sleep. But when you draw in the source of Laila Hu on high, on the contrary, that causes us to wake up. So Rebbe is saying something very, very powerful and profound. There's two levels of Laila Hu. There's a level of Laila Hu, it's dark. And guess what? Down here, it's dark, you go to sleep. But what's the source of Laila Hu? Laila Hu comes from the highest source. Higher than Yom Hazeh, Yom Ahu, Laila Hazeh. It's high, Laila Hu. It comes from the level of Tzimtzum, which has no connection with revelation. So when you draw in the Laila Hu from on high into the Laila Hu now, guess what? You're connected to the essence of the king. And therefore, not the Shnas HaMelech, therefore the king is alive. So they're explained so beautifully, but Laila Hu is the cause of not the Shnas HaMelech. Because you're on the level of sleeping, it means there's nothing, there's no revelation, there's total disconnect. You draw in the Laila Hu from on high, through the Mesiras Nefesh, that causes not the Shnas HaMelech. And now Rebbe says he'd like to add that what happens when you have Laila Hu, and you're drawn from Laila Hu high, then you reach the level of Nada Shnas HaMelech. So Rebbe says that Nada Shnas HaMelech, the king being awake, is even higher than the level of Laila Hu. Laila Hu, not down here, Laila Hu and high. Why? And but what causes? But it's higher. But what causes the Nada comes from Laila Hu. So Laila Hu down here causes Laila Hu on high, and when that Laila Hu comes down to this world, it causes Shnas HaMelech. So Laila Hu, the darkness, the abyss, the nothing, causes Shnas HaMelech, but Shnas HaMelech obviously is much higher. Why is that? Never explains like this. When we say day and night, what are we referring to? Concealment or revelation of the infinite light of Hashem. So there's two components. There's revelation and there's concealment. So therefore, even after you draw in Laila Hu, the high level of Laila Hu from on high, into the Laila down here, so what happens? Because Laila and Yom, one is concealment, one is revelation, even after you draw in the Laila Hu down to this world, but nevertheless, it's still dark. And not only it's dark, it's Laila Hu, it's very, very dark. Because what gets drawn down? What gets drawn down? Laila Hu. Very, very powerful. The essence of Hashem, the essence of concealment. What gets drawn down? Laila Hu. What's Laila Hu? It's still concealment. You didn't draw down any revelation. And the same thing also, when the Jewish people were in Mesiras Nefesh, the whole year, they learned and they prayed. But what was motivating them? What was motivating was the concealment. The concealment was motivating them. Because the concealment, that awakened their soul from on high to come down. But it didn't affect them in their revealed attributes, in their intellect, in their emotions. They were connecting to the concealment, which affected them, but what didn't transform them. And like the Rebbe gives the example, like it's brought down in Chassidus, it says when a person's sleeping, so you don't see the difference between the head and the feet, or the intellect and the emotions. Because you see the way all the koiches are all together. When a person's sleeping, all the koiches operate together. In other words, why is that? Because when a person's sleeping, all your attributes get elevated to a higher level. So that's great. It's amazing, and that's why we get recharged at night. But it doesn't affect us in the revealed attributes. On the contrary, they actually, if you sleep too long, you need to be, you have to do some kind of therapy to get yourself reactivated. Because sleeping is good; it gets you back to your source, but you still need to be active. So, but on the other hand, so that's the problem with Laila, Ahuu. Yeah, it's great. Mesiras Nefesh, you connect to the most powerful places. But Laila remains Laila, dark remains dark, and doesn't affect you in a real way. But Laila Hu Nada Shnas HaMelech means that the king was awakened. It was awake. Waking, what does waking mean? It means revelation. That the infinite power of Hashem affected us in a revealed way, in every single part of us. And what it created the unity between the concealment, Balaila Hu, into Shnas HaMelech, into all the revealed parts of ourselves. And like Rebbe brings from the Mittler Rebbe that he says, that this that we say about Laila Ahuu, which again we're talking about concealment, was not the Shnas HaMelech. On the other hand, Hashem was awake. He gives an example of, like, for example, of an animal, a deer, that one eye is open and one eye is closed. Which means you have both components. You have the revelation, it's affecting you, your intellect, the emotions, but you're connected to the concealment part, which is much higher. How do you create the union of the two? That you should be revealed and concealed, because we want the concealed part, the Balaila Ahuu, but we also want the revealed part. That happens when you unify the opposites. When you unify the concealment and the revelation together. Well, how do you create the unification? That's when the Atzmus, the essence of Hashem, gets revealed. Because once the Atzmus, the essence of Hashem, is revealed, revelation and concealment, they're not even opposites. When you're dealing with Atzmus, the essence of Hashem, there's no opposites. There's no revelation and concealment. So once you have once you don't have opposites, then they both get revealed. And like the Rebbe says, it's brought in many places, other places in Chassidus, that Atzmus, the essence of Hashem, has the power to give off light, but he also has the power not to give off light. And it's both true. Atzmus could give off light, could not give off light, reveal, conceal. It's all the same thing by him. And that's why the Rebbe says, it says in the Chassidic Discourse, that Nadada Shnas HaMelech, that Hashem also was revealed, woke up, happened through what? The Mesiras Nefesh, we went and self-sacrificed a whole year. What does that mean? That means it's referring to that we were able to draw down the essence of Hashem, the Atzmas, the essence of Hashem. Because how can we draw down the essence of Hashem? Because Mesiras Nefesh, how does somebody go on Mesiras Nefesh? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to pray, I'm going to study, I'm going to do mitzvahs, I'm going to be happy even though I don't want. That comes from the essence of your soul. And so when the person goes on Mesiras Nefesh, means they're working with their essence of the soul, you draw down the essence of Hashem. And by drawing down the essence of Hashem, you create the ultimate unity between concealment and revelation. So again, so what the Rebbe is saying is, even though Balaila Ahuu is the highest level, and when you have Balaila Ahuu, you're drawing it down into this world, but nevertheless, the person stays who they are after it wears off. But Shnad the Shnas HaMelech, when Hashem is awake, it causes the union between the highest level Balaila Ahuu, and it affects you in a real way, in your intellect, in your emotions, and then it becomes transformative, and it stays within you for much longer. And Rebbe says you like to connect this, where it's brought down in the Chassidic Discourse, that when there was Shnad the Shnas HaMelech, which means when the Atzmus of Hashem got revealed, so Hashem was awake. So what happened, it says over there, you became the union between Makif, when it hovers over, and Primi, when it gets internalized. What does that mean? That means like this. You have the light, which is above Ishtalshalos, above the levels, which is called Makif. And the goal of that is that the Makif should become a Pnimius. We have our intellect, we have our emotions, and we have stuff above us. Faith, etc. The goal is to bring in the Makif light, internalize it. Why is that? When not the Shnas HaMelech, the Makif becomes Pnimi. Why is that? Because the source, what's the source of Makif, the light of Makif, and the source of Pnimi? The source is revelation and concealment. In other words, what's the source of the Makif, which seemingly is higher? Makif comes from revelation. It's a huge revelation. What's the source of internalizing something? The source is actually concealment. Because it's concealment, you can internalize it. So the source of Pnimi is from concealment. The source of revelation, high revelation, is from Makif is from revelation. But when you draw down Atzmos, the essence of Hashem, then you can unify both. You can unify the concealment and the revelation, and then you can have the unity between Makif and Pnimi. And when you have the ultimate unity, which you need, the balance between Makif and Pnimi, not just Makif, which is revelation, which is a lower level, and not just Pnimi, which is internalized, but it's a lower level. How do you have, comes from a higher level? How do you, when a person has the unity of both, Makif and Pnimi, you're coming from belilah, ההוא, but on the other hand, you're internalizing it. That's when you have the ultimate. That creates the ultimate salvation for the Jewish people. Why? Because the problem the Rebbe says is in the world of Makif, we have the huge revelation. Unfortunately, the klipot can get access to Makif. Because again, Makif is revelation. So in revelation, there's no concealment. So even the klipot can get access to it. And that's why we know that Haman made the tree, how tall? 50 amos. Why? Because he wanted to go to the level of the 50th level. We know, Shtalshus, you count 49 days. The 50th is a gift from Hashem. The 50th is Makif. So Haman made a tree he was going to Makif, and he could have gotten from Makif. And unfortunately, Klippas can get from Makif. But when we go ahead, take the Makif, the 50th level, and bring it down to Pnimius, we bring it down to our intellect and our emotions, and we spend time studying and meditating, internalizing it, and doing mitzvahs, then when you have the unity of Makif and Pnimi, then you have, like Yehudim for the Jewish people, there was light, there was joy, there was celebration, and we had beauty, and the Rebbe finishes off by saying, Kain Ti Alanu, to be with us. We should have the drawing down the most powerful lights into it in a personalized way, and we'll all have Oira, V'simcha, V'sasa, and V'yikar in a revealed way. We'll have a happy Purim and a great Purim with all the great blessings and all the great light. So have a happy and joyous Purim. We should all merit to have the greatest revelation, and God willing, our next class will be in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Happy Purim.